The house was incredibly quiet that afternoon, the type of stillness that makes you aware of the soft hum of appliances or the distant singing of birds outside the window. I found myself alone in the living room, idly flipping through a magazine. I had no actual desire to read. My husband, perpetually engrossed in his work, was away on another business trip. I wasn't frustrated. This had become an ordinary occurrence. However, the lingering emptiness felt more pronounced than usual. I glanced at my phone, hoping for a message or a call, but there was nothing. The silence emphasized how predictable my life had become, how routine had enveloped me like an unseen barrier. I loved my husband, or so I told myself. But over the years, something had altered. Passion had diminished into comfort, and comfort had slowly transformed into complacency. The sound of a car door closing jolted me out of my daydream. I peered through the window to see my nephew Ethan approaching the house. He was my husband's younger brother's son, though he felt more like a distant cousin due to our small age gap in his early 20s. Ethan radiated confidence and possessed a charisma that effortlessly attracted others. I opened the door before he could knock. "Hey Ethan, what brings you here?" I asked. Masking my surprise with a smile, he grinned. "Uncle asked me to retrieve some documents he left. Hope it's not a bad time, not at all." "Come in," I replied, stepping aside as he entered. I couldn't help but notice how smoothly he moved and the vibrant energy he infused into the room. He tossed his bag onto the couch and glanced around. "Nice place as always, you've got great taste." I chuckled, dismissing the compliment. Flattery won't get you out of trouble. "What documents are you after?" He shrugged, something about property papers. I decided to check his study while Ethan headed there. As he made his way to the study, I reflected on how different he was from my husband. Ethan was spontaneous, charming, and unapologetically self-assured, traits that had been absent from my everyday life for a long time. I shook off the thought, feeling a bit foolish. He was family after all. But then, Ethan returned with the papers. His sleeves rolled up to reveal a tattoo on his forearm that I hadn't seen before. He caught me staring and smirked. "You like it?" "It's interesting," I replied. Feeling slightly embarrassed, we sat down and chatted for a while, more than we ever had before. His stories were lively, filled with humor and adventure. A stark contrast to the monotony I had grown accustomed to. His laughter was contagious, and his presence was magnetic. For a brief moment, I forgot about everything: my husband, my responsibilities, the unspoken rules of propriety in that moment. It was just Ethan and me. Two people sharing a connection I couldn't quite define. Our conversation flowed smoothly, filling the room with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Ethan reclined on the couch, his gaze locking with mine for a moment too long as he talked. There was something in the way he listened, truly engaged with every word I spoke, that was disarming, almost intoxicating. At one point, he reached for the glass of water I had set on the coffee table, and our hands touched accidentally. The contact was fleeting but left a lasting impression in my mind. I instinctively withdrew, laughing it off, but I could sense the heat rising in my cheeks. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, his tone casual but his gaze searching mine. "Of course," I replied quickly, standing up to create some space. "It's just warm in here, that's all." I walked to the kitchen, busily focusing on something without any clear purpose. I could feel his presence even from across the room, a subtle tension building that neither of us acknowledged. When I turned around, he was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that same effortless confidence. "You seem different today," he observed, his voice now softer. "Different? How?" I attempted to sound indifferent. "I don't know, maybe more alive," he replied, catching me off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. There was a sincerity in his tone that made it difficult to dismiss as mere flattery. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in a long time, and it scared me. "Ethan, you should probably go soon," I said at last, avoiding his gaze. "Well?" he asked, stepping closer. "Am I making you uncomfortable?" "No, it's not that," I quickly responded. Just then he pressed his eyes into mine, and I found myself without an answer, or perhaps I did have one, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. The air between us felt electric, weighed down with unspoken words and unacknowledged emotions. He was standing too close now, and I could sense my resolve faltering. "This isn't right," I whispered to myself more than to him. "I understand he mentioned his tone was quiet and steady, but doesn't it feel appropriate?" I gazed up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. For a brief moment, the rest of the world faded away. It felt like just the two of us, frozen in a situation that seemed both impossible and inevitable. He extended his hand, gently brushing against mine, and I didn't pull back. The room appeared to constrict around us, the space between us vanishing, as if it had never existed. My mind yelled at me to stop, to retreat, to think about the repercussions, but I couldn't move. Just as the tension reached its peak, the sound of the front door opening disrupted the moment. My heart raced into my throat as Ethan and I quickly disconnected, both turning toward the noise. My nephew Jake stood in the doorway, his expression a blend of confusion and suspicion. "Hey, Jake," he said slowly, his eyes flicking back and forth between us. "Am I interrupting something?" "No, of course not," I responded, trying to laugh, though it felt hollow even to me. Ethan was just about to leave. "Yeah, I was only grabbing some papers for Aunt," he indicated to Jake with a casual smile. Jake lifted an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "Well, I suppose it's good timing then. Uncle asked me to stop by and pick up the same papers." My stomach twisted as I recognized Ethan's excuse had been revealed. Jake's presence served as a harsh reminder of the boundary I had nearly crossed, and shame swept over me like a wave. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I quickly said to regain control of the situation. "Ethan already has the documents. You don't need to be here." Jake didn't budge, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Funny he didn't mention you'd be here." Ethan shrugged, his casual demeanor untouched. "I didn't think it was important. Aunt and I were just catching up, nothing more." The words lingered in the air, seemingly innocuous on the surface, but filled with unsaid implications. Jake appeared to sense it, his gaze lingering on me a moment longer than was comfortable. "Well, I'll let you two continue," he finally said, his tone clipped as he turned and walked back out the door, leaving it slightly ajar behind him. The ensuing silence was overwhelming. Ethan looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Please like and subscribe, thanks. That's all I need to keep creating videos like this."